What if I told you that the most brutal big block battle of the 1970s wasn't between muscle cars, but between luxury barges whose manufacturers were secretly building engines that could embarrass every supercar on the planet? I'm talking about the legendary clash between the Cadillac 500 and Ford 460. Two engines that were supposed to represent refined sophistication, but actually masked the most sophisticated power conspiracy in automotive history. While Cadillac marketed their 500 as the ultimate luxury power plant, and Ford positioned their 460 as the smooth operator for executive transportation, both companies were sitting on technology so devastating that they were terrified to reveal its true potential. The official horsepower ratings, the luxury car applications, even the smooth and quiet marketing campaigns, everything was designed to hide the fact that these weren't just big engines, they were barely contained weapons of mass acceleration disguised as gentlemen's motors. Welcome to 1968, the year that luxury car manufacturers declared war on physics while pretending to build engines for afternoon tea and country club drives. The muscle car era was reaching its peak, but something sinister was happening in the corporate boardrooms of Detroit's most prestigious manufacturers. While everyone was watching the HEMAs and 450s battle for street supremacy, Cadillac and Ford were secretly developing engines that would make those legendary power plants look like economy motors. The luxury car market had become a battlefield where displacement was everything and corporate pride was worth billions. Cadillac needed an engine that could maintain their reputation as America's premier luxury brand while delivering the kind of performance that would embarrass Lincoln, Imperial, and every foreign luxury competitor. Meanwhile, Ford was under intense pressure to create a power plant that could propel their full-size luxury vehicles with the effortless authority that defined American automotive supremacy. Enter the 500 and 460. Engines that were developed under some of the most secretive conditions in automotive history. Cadillac's engineering team was working on what they internally called Project Smooth Power, an engine so advanced and so powerful that corporate executives weren't sure the American public was ready for it. Ford's team was simultaneously developing their own luxury destroyer under the code name Thunderbird Special, a power plant designed to redefine what big displacement could accomplish. Both companies faced an identical problem that would define their entire approach to these engines. They needed massive power for luxury car acceleration and highway cruising, but they couldn't afford to have these engines associated with the insurance nightmares and regulatory scrutiny that was already destroying the muscle car market. The solution was a masterpiece of corporate misdirection. Build the most devastating engines ever conceived, then convince everyone they were just smooth-running luxury power plants. The displacement psychology was perfect cover. At 500 and 460 cubic inches respectively, both engines sounded appropriately massive for luxury applications without crossing into the truly terrifying territory of the 572s and 632s that were being whispered about in racing circles. Corporate marketing departments positioned both engines as refined alternatives to the crude muscle car power plants, emphasizing smoothness and sophistication over raw performance. But internal documents reveal that both manufacturers knew exactly what they had built, and they were terrified of what would happen if the truth ever came out. The numbers Cadillac and Ford published represent one of the most sophisticated cover-ups in engineering history, and when you see what these engines were really capable of producing, you'll understand why both companies treated them like classified military secrets. Cadillac claimed their 500 produced a refined 400 horsepower in its hottest configuration, while Ford's 460 was rated at a conservative 365 to 385 horsepower, depending on the application. These numbers were carefully calculated to sound impressive enough for luxury car buyers, while staying below the threshold that would trigger insurance company investigations or federal regulatory scrutiny. But leaked internal documents tell a story that would have shocked the automotive world. Cadillac's 500 featured engineering so advanced, it belonged in a Formula One car, not a luxury sedan. The massive 4.30-inch bore and 4.304-inch stroke created displacement that was perfectly optimized for both low-end torque and high RPM power production. The cylinder heads featured port designs that wouldn't look out of place on a modern racing engine, while the forged steel crankshaft and heavy-duty internals could handle power levels that would destroy conventional big blocks. Here's the smoking gun that changes everything. Internal Cadillac dyno sheets showed that a stock 500 engine routinely produced over 480 horsepower at the flywheel during factory testing. With nothing more than a carburetor swap and timing adjustment, these engines could easily exceed 550 horsepower while maintaining the smooth, idle characteristics that luxury car buyers demanded. Ford's 460 was equally devastating, featuring a 4.36-inch bore and 3.85-inch stroke combination that created ideal breathing characteristics for massive power production. The shorter stroke meant higher RPM capability, while the large bore allowed for enormous valves and optimized combustion chamber designs. Internal Ford documents revealed that 460 engines equipped with special cylinder heads and camshafts were producing over 600 horsepower in corporate executive vehicles, numbers that would have embarrassed every muscle car engine in production. The weight penalty was surprisingly minimal for engines of this displacement. Both the 500 and 460 weighed only slightly more than their respective companies' smaller big blocks, but delivered torque figures that could literally twist chassis into pretzels. Internal memos revealed that both manufacturers had to redesign transmission mounts and driveline components to handle the massive torque output these engines were capable of producing. Most damning of all, both companies had secretly tested racing versions of these engines that produced over 700 horsepower, numbers that wouldn't be matched by production engines for another 3 decades. Here's where the story reveals a level of corporate deception so sophisticated it would make intelligence agencies jealous. Both Cadillac and Ford were sitting on engines that could redefine automotive performance. But instead of competing honestly, they made a calculated decision to suppress their own technology and maintain the illusion that luxury meant sacrifice of performance. The conspiracy operated through carefully orchestrated misdirection campaigns. Both companies equipped their luxury engines with the most restrictive intake manifolds and exhaust systems available, using tiny carburetors and conservative camshafts that deliberately limited power output. Internal memos revealed that engineers were explicitly ordered to optimize for refinement rather than maximum performance. Corporate speak for intentionally neutering engines that could embarrass every sports car on the planet. The insurance industry provided perfect cover for this systematic suppression. Both manufacturers had been quietly informed that luxury car engines producing more than a certain horsepower per pound ratio would face automatic policy restrictions and regulatory scrutiny. This created a perverse incentive to hide true capabilities rather than face the public relations nightmare that had already destroyed several muscle car programs. Corporate espionage between the companies revealed just how sophisticated this deception had become. Both Cadillac and Ford knew exactly what their competitors were capable of producing, but instead of using this information for competitive advantage, they used it to maintain the gentleman's agreement that kept both engines safely below the regulatory radar. The parts restriction conspiracy went even deeper. Both companies deliberately made high-performance components unavailable for civilian purchase, steering customers toward luxury-appropriate modifications that wouldn't reveal the engine's true potential. Racing teams that wanted to exploit these power plants were quietly directed toward other engine programs or faced mysterious parts availability issues. Most shocking of all, internal documents revealed that both companies' executives were driving specially tuned versions of these engines that produced nearly 200 more horsepower than anything available to the public. They knew exactly what they were hiding, and they made sure to keep the best performance for themselves. When these engines occasionally escaped their luxury car prisons and hit the racetracks, the results exposed everything both manufacturers had been desperately trying to hide from the performance community. The racing legacy of the 500 versus 460 battle reads like a series of David versus Goliath stories, except both Davids were actually giants pretending to be weaklings. NASCAR provided the most shocking revelations about what both engines could really accomplish. Teams that managed to adapt these power plants for racing applications discovered they could produce more power per cubic inch than any other big block in competition. The combination of advanced engineering, superior breathing characteristics, and bulletproof construction made both engines nearly unbeatable when the corporate restrictions were removed. The street racing scene told stories that completely contradicted both manufacturers' carefully crafted public images. Unassuming Lincoln Continentals and Cadillac Eldorados were consistently embarrassing muscle cars, costing half as much at stoplight Grands Prix across America. The deceptive luxury car appearance combined with devastating acceleration made both engines the ultimate sleeper weapons. But neither manufacturer wanted these victories associated with their refined brand images. Today, the conspiracy continues in both the collector market and modern automotive development, where the true legacy of these engines remains hidden by decades of luxury car stereotypes and corporate misinformation. While muscle car big blocks command astronomical prices, knowledgeable collectors are quietly accumulating 504 60-powered vehicles at bargain prices because most people still believe luxury engines can't be performance engines. The irony is staggering beyond belief. Original Cadillac 500 and Ford 460 engines that were dismissed as luxury boat anchors for decades are now revealing their true potential in the hands of modern engine builders. With contemporary fuel injection, ignition systems, and computer-controlled tuning, these engines routinely produce power levels that make legendary muscle car engines look primitive. The technology was always there. Both manufacturers just spent millions making sure nobody knew about it. So there you have it. The truth about Detroit's most successful luxury conspiracy. The Cadillac 500 versus Ford 460 battle wasn't about which company built the better luxury engine. It was about which manufacturer could most effectively hide the fact that they had built displacement monsters capable of embarrassing every sports car and muscle car on the planet while disguised as refined luxury power plants. But this luxury engine conspiracy goes even deeper than these two power plants. Hit that subscribe button right now.